100 people have been vaccinated through faith in vaccine events. So today begins the day where all people in the district who are 16 years old and older are eligible to receive the vaccine. So go to vaccinate.dc.gov to sign up, and you will be invited to an appointment according to your priority group. We are also approaching the time when everyone in the region is eligible in their home state as well, where we'll be on the same page. So we are encouraging you to pre-register where you live. Obviously, you know our number, vaccinate.dc.gov, 855-363-0333. In Maryland, for Maryland residents, it's covidvax.maryland.gov. And for Virginia residents, it's vaccinate.virginia.gov. We will make sure to leave those phone numbers and websites up and tweet them out for residents of the region. I've said before, and I'll repeat it, it's important that our whole region gets vaccinated because of how we live, work, and play in this region. We want everybody to have the protection of a vaccine. I also want to call to the attention of DC residents that FEMA is making a very important relief program available for DC families who have funeral expenses related to COVID. And this is a direct program with FEMA. I have asked my team at the OCME and at the EOC, our Homeland Security Division, to make sure that we are sending reminders to families that this program is available. So please go to FEMA.gov or call directly 844-684-6333 to understand the benefits of the program and how you may apply. Now let me turn to a very important program that we are announcing today called Stay DC. And it means that this program is aimed at helping people stay in their housing who have been impacted by COVID. We know that many residents, through no fault of their own, have lost significant amounts of income over the last year, and many families have made difficult decisions about how to spend their money. And we know that not all families have the income that they need to pay their bills. So what we are announcing today will help us get out $350 million in rental assistance and other programs to address housing instability in the district. The new program will build on multiple programs that we've had in place, and it will expand others and during the public health emergency to address housing instability. So we have already talk to you about the $1.5 million available for tenant-based rental assistance, $20 million for the COVID-19 housing assistance program, $11.5 million for housing stabilization grants, $1 million for mortgage assistance, $14 million for the emergency rental assistance program, ERAP, $27.2 million for the emergency solutions grants, and $16 million for the low-income housing assistance for energy programs. The funding for DC Stay, as I mentioned, is approximately $350 million and is a combination of funds from the December Congressional Appropriations Act as well as the American Rescue Plan. The money will be used to help residents facing housing instability due to the pandemic up to 12 months in back due rent and 3 months of forward rent and utilities. And you note the income parameters for eligible participants. The program is being administered by the DC Department of Human Services, led by Director Zeilinger, in collaboration with the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and the Department of Housing and Community Development, led by Deputy Mayor Falchicchio and Polly Donaldson. So now I'm going to turn it over to Director Zeilinger, who will talk in some detail about the program. And then we will get to a few final updates and your questions. Laura.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We're thrilled today to be launching Stay DC. Residents can apply for Stay DC online on a website. So if you go to stay.dc.gov, you can begin your application for that rental assistance program. As the mayor noted, we can support with up to 12 months worth of back rent, as well as help with rent going forward for 3 months at a time. So we want to encourage anybody who is struggling, and we know many people are struggling with their housing costs, to go ahead and access that assistance now. You don't have to wait until you are facing eviction. We would like to be able to help residents at this point in time. The other way you can get assistance, if you either are not able to get online or if you have any difficulty with the application or you have questions, we have a dedicated call center where you can call to get assistance. And that number is very easy to remember. It's 833-4-STAY-DC. And you can call that number and we can support you. You can also get help through one of our community-based organizations. Now, we're equipped to help people in all languages, so if you call the call center, there are operators there who speak English and Spanish, or they will be able to connect with the DC language line to assist applicants in multiple languages that our residents speak. But we want to encourage everyone who needs assistance with their rent, their utilities, to go ahead and seek that assistance now. We know how challenging it is to be building up that debt, and we are equipped and ready. And as the mayor noted, there's more than $350 million in federal assistance available to support our residents.
Thank you, Laura. And you can learn more about these programs at the Deputy Mayor's weekly check-in on recovery programs. Pleased that Councilmember Bonds will be a featured panelist, as well as our team to talk about these programs and more. Additionally, George Lambert, who is the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Urban League, will join the team. We have, I was pleased to speak with a number of our LEA leaders last week with good news that my upcoming budget, though still in progress, we will include an increase to the uniform per pupil student funding formula, which largely drives our school investments. And that increase will be 3.6%. Additionally, we can tell families and staff and kids that we fully expect to be in person for all kids 5 days a week in the upcoming school year. So we will stay focused on making sure that our summer opportunities are exciting for kids, but also enriching to help our young people be on track for the start of the school year. Also, just follow DC Health Link. On March 29th, the district opened its online health insurance marketplace with expanded health insurance benefits. So the American Rescue Plan lowers health insurance premiums for DC residents. It reduces premiums for health insurance through DC Health Link. So please follow DC Health Link for all the benefits that come from the American Rescue Plan. We are also very grateful to Chairwoman Maloney and our Congresswoman Norton. Our bill, H.R. 51, the DC Admission Act, will be marked up by the Oversight Dems this week, actually on Wednesday, and we expect a full vote in the House next week. And speaking of statehood, we want to wish everyone a much needed Emancipation Day and a bit of a break. And it's on a Friday. And we will continue as we have. The Secretary of the District of Columbia has in place a number of virtual events this week commemorating Emancipation Day. And one of the most significant things, since I hope everyone will tune in to see a documentary that has been produced around the district's history of disenfranchisement and the road to full democracy. And that's going to air on WUSA 9 this Friday at 4 p.m. and on our network, DCN, at 8 p.m. So please stay tuned on Emancipation Day. So with that, we will take your questions. Hi, Mark. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Two questions. First, on the slide where you presented the phone numbers for DC, Maryland, and Virginia, so are you now encouraging people to get registered or get vaccinated in their home states? Is DC still going to vaccinate essential workers who are Maryland and Virginia residents, or is something there changed? This is the first time you've really pushed the out-of-state numbers.
Yes, so we still have the same allocation of our doses for essential workers regardless of their residence. So that part hasn't changed. Though we are encouraging people, because now we're kind of all in the same place with our vaccination eligibility, to register where they live.
And if I could follow up on the schools, will there be a virtual option for the next school year? If you are able to open fully 5 days a week for everybody, expect everybody back in, will you still provide an option to parents and students to have a virtual learning experience?
We expect that some families will need that, Mark, and we know that the system needs to have an option in case a cohort or a school has to be quarantined, or in the very unlikely instance that we see a rebound of the virus. So they will have to have a virtual option in limited instances. Yes.
You opened it up to 16-year-olds today. So how soon will they be actually getting appointments? Because you said that depending on your category or something like that.
Well, you recall the categories that we have: 65 and older, priority zip codes, people with qualifying medical conditions, general public. And Dr. Nesbitt will correct me if I've misremembered something. And so depending on where the 16-year-olds fall in those categories, they would be in the general public if they don't have a qualifying medical condition.
So we could see 16-year-olds as soon as this week getting vaccinated?
Yes.
Okay. And
I think you also know that 16-year-olds with qualifying health conditions have been vaccinated in the district for weeks through a partnership with Children's National. So I think it's like over 1,000, if I'm not misremembering, who have been vaccinated to date, who are in the 16 to 17-year-old range.
And we heard quite a bit last week from Maryland and Virginia about shortages, and I really didn't know, what was the situation here in DC? Are we short or in terms of vaccine? What's the situation?
Well, we feel like we've been short because of the population versus population and worker population is how to calculate the doses. But putting that aside, are you talking about some issues with the Johnson & Johnson
Yeah, I was
distribution?
wondering, how was that affecting
Dr.
DC?
Nesbitt, can you speak to that?
Sure. So we have been since December, we're in week 18 now of COVID-19 vaccination programs. We have been receiving vaccines that are first Pfizer and then Moderna as they were approved. In our conversations with the federal government, we are to understand that the amount of vaccine that is allocated to the state for both Pfizer and Moderna will always stay at the level it is. It may go up just slightly, but we may have pretty much plateaued here. So what we get as a state allocation for Pfizer and Moderna is not likely to change for several months. What has not been consistent is the number of doses that we receive for Johnson & Johnson. The federal government has not communicated that we are now in a consistent cadence or total number of those doses that will be released. So on a week-to-week basis, we may experience a fluctuation up or down in the amount of Johnson & Johnson vaccine that we receive as a state. 2 weeks ago, we received 10,000 Johnson & Johnson doses. This week, it was more like 1,100. Okay, so when you see those types of notable differences, the first Johnson & Johnson we ever got was 6,000, then we got about 900 to 1,800 the second time, which was a few weeks later, and then 10,000, and now 1,100. So just looking at the trends for Johnson & Johnson, it's very clear that what the federal government has communicated, that we're not in either a clear cadence or at a stable amount of Johnson & Johnson made available that will always go up and never go down.
And considering all the vaccines, roughly how much are we getting a week?
It's on the website. I can make sure I get it to you, but we're probably still around the 25,000 mark a week. We have been fortunate that some of our entities that receive a direct federal allocation, which is different than the state allocation, schedule their appointments through vaccinate.dc.gov. So that's many of the pharmacies, independent pharmacies have now integrated into that system. So that allows our number of doses to be boosted quite a bit. So last week we sent out about 32,000 or so appointments. On Thursday, we sent out more Sunday because of the non-response, and then we'll continue until we have all the appointments scheduled that match vaccine availability.
James?
Good afternoon. I have a question for Ms. Donaldson. My question has to do with the $1 million for the DC Mortgage Assistance Program. Just to be sure, if you participate in HPAP and you happen to get behind, are you eligible to participate in this program? And if you have a mortgage with a bank, can you participate in this program also?
Thank you very much for that question. This program, the Mortgage Assistance Program, is using federal funds and it's administered by the DC Housing Finance Agency. And especially if you have a federally backed mortgage guarantee, that's one of the determinants of eligibility. I will say also that in the American Rescue Plan, there is a new fund, the Home Ownership Assistance Fund, that will have $50 million that coming to the district that will be a broader effort to help homeowners, including particularly those in the HPAP, the Home Purchase Assistance Program portfolio, as well as others. So it won't be limited in the same way that the MAP program is. So that's more expansive, it's a lot more funding, and that will be, we are awaiting final guidance from Treasury in the design of that program, and then we'll be launching that as well at a date to be determined in the future. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Muriel Bowser.
Hi.
We've been reporting on people going out of the DC area, DC residents going out of the DC area to get vaccinated. Especially Hagerstown yesterday came up as an example of folks trying to go over there to get their shots. With the lack of J&J vaccine to the district, Do you guys have any concerns that this is still, once again, a free-for-all situation to go and get the vaccine?
I don't know I don't know what the link is with the J&J vaccine.
With
Can you
less
tell me more?
vaccines- With less vaccines being available with the J&J issues, are you all concerned that people are still just rushing to go wherever they need to go to get a vaccine? Is there still a free-for-all issue
Well,
with it?
let me just say this, Stephanie, that we have a system that we know is equitable and is getting the vaccine out and sending people messages. We know that people are going out because of the number of people who aren't responding to those invites. But do I think that people are going to go outside of that system and try many systems? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that people will do that.
What are some of the efforts to actually reach people at their homes, the ones who can't go to Hagerstown, for example, or can't go to any of the district sites to try and get their vaccination there?
You mean people who can't leave their homes?
Correct.
Let me ask Dr. Nesbitt to speak to that.
Again, we have been focused on vaccinating DC residents in DC and not as the leadership of the city encouraging people to go to Hagerstown and to wait online for several hours. Last week, notably, anyone who was in our pre-registration system that lived in a priority zip code received an appointment. Whether they were over 65, 18 to 64, with a qualifying condition or an essential worker, if they lived in a priority zip code, they all received an invitation from us to schedule. So we do have the ability, as Mayor Bowser said, to meet our equity goals and to reach out to those individuals. Where we need more assistance is for people to respond using the manner that they ask to be communicated to, either email or phone, or to remove themselves from our pre-registration system if they have gotten a vaccine somewhere else. In terms of on-site, residential site vaccines, we have been at it for several months now, vaccinating people who live in public housing in partnership with the DC Housing Authority and Hopkins Medicine. We hope to, by the end of this week, launch a registration system for people who are 100% homebound or who have significant mobility limitations to be able to vaccinate them in their home. And we have already begun to identify individuals to actively reach out to them who are homebound or have significant mobility limitations in partnership with the Department of Healthcare Finance and the Department of Aging and Community Living.
2 follow-up questions to that.
Yes.
Then. Is there any numbers to how many people, residents in the district, you've identified as being homebound that can't go to get the vaccine? And then the second question is, it sounds like you're saying there really is an issue with people not taking themselves off the list. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So as you all know that we send out invitations.
Sound for Dr. Nesbitt. Hold on 1 second. Okay.
Okay. We reach out to people to schedule their appointments. You can, let me start upwards a little bit further. You can register 24/7 on vaccinate.dc.gov for an appointment. And you can select how you would like us to send you your invitation to schedule an appointment. You can do that via email or phone. And then we have hours of operation that we've posted for our call center. They're open 7 days a week. The hours vary on the weekend at 1-855-363-0333. When people pre-register in that system, we then select them to be able to schedule an appointment. If people are remaining in that pre-registration system who have already been vaccinated, you got vaccinated at your doctor's office that's affiliated with GW or Howard University, you were vaccinated because you chose to go to Maryland to stand online at one of the federal centers, or you were vaccinated through one of the community health centers that has its own cache of vaccine, right, and doesn't schedule with us. If you don't remove yourself from the system, we are going to still have the potential of randomly selecting you to schedule an appointment. That takes away from other people who have not been able to access a vaccine through other means from them being able to be selected. So we only want people who are still in need of a vaccination appointment to be in our system. If you have been vaccinated somewhere else, you can send us an email at at dc.gov, and we will remove you from the list. But that is extremely helpful for us, for only people who still need a first vaccination appointment to register in our system.
So what's the backlog like?
What do you mean by backlog?
I mean, how many people are on that waiting list right now that haven't responded, that are just, those appointments are
I
just
think,
sitting
was
there?
that not presented in the slide deck? It's
No,
around
that, how
100
many people are in the system?
How many people didn't remove themselves?
We don't
We
know
don't
that.
know.
We don't know that.
Okay, so we don't know how many are waiting, how many appointments are, could go to somebody else.
Well, they do go to somebody else. So like if, what day is it, Thursday that they
Yes.
go out? People have 2 days to respond. And if they don't respond in those 2 days, then they fall off and those appointments go to somebody else. Well, it's a
It
2 day,
does.
it's a delay. Like, so we had to hold that for 2 days. So that's 2 days taken away from somebody who was waiting.
But we don't know how many appointments are being held up because of that.
Well, we can tell you like last week how many we didn't get. I don't think we have that right here, but we can tell you like after 2 days how many we had to send out. But we oversend to guesstimate how many people won't respond. You see what I'm saying? Trying to minimize that 2 day gap. You follow me? Yep. Yep, Julie?
I think just now you were about to tell us how many people are currently pre-registered who haven't gotten an invitation yet. Can you tell us how many there are and at the current pace, how many weeks it'll take for those people to get appointments?
Do you have that?
We can't tell you at the current rate or how long it will take those people to get an appointment, Julie. And I think we've articulated the reason for that several times, which is why we consider this to be pre-registration and not a wait list. Depending on your status, your eligibility, whether or not you are a senior, you have a qualifying health condition, you have a essential job in the District of Columbia, or you're a member of the general population, your time period can vary. For the past 3 to 4 weeks, every senior who was pre-registered got an invitation. Right. Every senior, not just in priority zip codes. Right. Now we're to the point where every person in a priority zip code who is applying, who is over 65, 18 to 64, is getting an appointment. So they're not in that system for more than a week. However, we know that there were tons of people who had no prior eligibility before we switched to 16 and older, who registered in the system the first day it went live. So saying that it takes weeks for them to get appointments is not appropriate because they weren't yet eligible, right?
I fully understand that. I'm asking about right now how many people are currently registered in the system who haven't been offered appointments yet.
Fair. I was responding to the second part of your question where you also asked how long it was going to take people to get an appointment, correct? Okay. So right now we have about, as you can see here, no, this is the number of people fully vaccinated. We have about 181,000 people who remain in the system who have not yet had an appointment scheduled.
Thank you.
But can I just emphasize something because for all those 181,000, there are thousands who aren't registered at all and aren't in line for an appointment. So I don't want us to lose sight that we still have a lot of work to do to get people registered because we're about to see we can't, if you're not registered at all, then this system and everything that we're talking about and wait, none of it applies to you. So we also have to be very concerned about getting people into the system for their appointments.
Right. Thank you. And Dr. Nesbitt, those categories that you were just talking about the eligible workers and people eligible by health and seniors, I know you've had to adjust the percentages as the general public is now eligible and has to get one of those buckets also. Can you tell us right now what % of appointments are designated for the general public?
Sure. I think you're also familiar with that. We have hard percentages that we use every week, but then there's overflow, right? So you have to be very careful when you're trying to make these assessments independently. So when we were at seniors, people with qualifying health conditions, and essential workers, 50% of the doses went to people in priority zip codes, and then 50% went to people who were either citywide or that small non-residential. Within that 50%, there's a breakdown of 20, 20, and 10%, right? 20% for seniors, 20% for individuals with a qualifying health condition, 18 to 64, and then 10% for essential workers. And that was on both sides, right? So you have a total of 40% going to seniors, a total of 40% going to people with qualifying conditions, and a total of 20% going to essential workers. Well, now that we've made progress and we've activated the general population, those percentages will change. And the number of seniors who have already received an appointment or who are likely to need to be reached by different means outside of that system, we're pretty much at that place, right? 70% of seniors are partially or fully vaccinated. So the senior bucket will still be prioritized. It'll be the first priority category at 10%, followed by 15% to qualifying medical conditions, 15% to essential workers, and then 10% to the general population. And that we're doing that because we still want to focus on those individuals who have the highest risk for severe illness, hospitalization, or death, or highest risk for acquiring the infection due to their employment status. Now, what happens if we don't have 10%, whatever the number for our total vaccines works out to be, right? We have 30,000 vaccines and we want to give 10% of those to seniors in DC priority zip codes. If those seniors, if there's only 2,500 seniors there, then we don't meet that mark. Those appointments then overflow into seniors citywide. If the total number of seniors citywide is less than their 20% of their total category, the extra appointments then fall to people who live in priority zip codes who have a qualifying health condition, right? So those are the ways that it works. It's a cascade. We don't just sit on appointments if 10% of the population isn't pre-registered or 15%. They follow to the next highest risk category.
And then we'll do a slide that shows that reprioritization. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, just 3 questions, 2 COVID, 1 non-COVID. My first is a follow-up on the homebound program. Will you be scheduling appointments by the end of the week, or are you expecting to have vaccinations? And for homebound individuals, how should they, it sounds like you're compiling a list of sorts, how should they make sure that they're on this list?
They'll have the opportunity to register by the end of this week is what I stated.
Oh,
so
I missed that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for asking the clarifying question. If when we launch this program, then the people who self-identify, who are not known to us because of their participation in the Medicaid program, who are not known to us because of the participation in, for example, food delivery programs for homebound seniors, then they can self-identify through the registration system.
Okay. And then a second question is, I know pharmacists who want to use their own scheduling systems are confused as to whether DC Health is requiring them to use vaccinate.dc.com. Can you, or dc.gov, can you just set the record straight for those pharmacists who are a little puzzled as to whether they have to use vaccinate.dc.gov?
Sure, and I'd ask that you provide the names of any of those pharmacies to our team so we can reach out to them again. We convened a meeting last week of all pharmacies who are receiving vaccine in the District of Columbia. That includes the independent pharmacies, the CVS's, Walgreens, Walmart's, Giants, et cetera, Safeway, all of them to talk about the process. The only entity that is still scheduling outside of the district system is CVS. I don't know that there is confusion amongst the pharmacies as opposed to the public really needing to understand how they access those doses that are now going directly to pharmacies from the federal government. You still need to come through the vaccinate.dc.gov portal.
Clear, they can choose their own scheduling systems if they want.
Right. So we have shared goals here in the District of Columbia, right? We're one city, one government between the legislative and executive branch, all trying to achieve the same goals of having DC residents receive vaccination and prioritizing equity and efficiency simultaneously. Our goals are shared with any new partner that comes into the program, whether they're receiving doses from us or whether or not they're receiving doses from the federal government. We believe the most equitable approach to getting vaccines out is centralized scheduling. And now that we have awareness of all of these independent pharmacies who may be receiving 100, 200 doses of vaccine a week or every other week, their appointments are going to be made available through vaccinate.dc.gov. It eliminates the likelihood that individuals who have never pre-registered, who are just members of the general population with lower risk, would be vaccinated before those individuals who are already pre-registered and who have higher risk.
Thank you, Dr. Nesbitt. And then a final question. Traffic fatalities are up 57%. We had a gentleman who was killed this past Friday. Mayor, can I get your reaction to that? And then I also know that advocates are calling for urgent action, including funding for the Vision Zero Enhancement Omnibus Amendment Act, which I understand was passed last year. So can I get your reaction to?
Well, certainly we are, I have a report from this year so far, and we certainly hope that that trend will reverse for the remainder of the year. The very violent crash last Friday is still under investigation, so I can't really say more about that. It looks like certainly speed was an issue, was a contributing factor, but that investigation is not complete. Yes, Mark.
Clarifications on a couple
Yep.
of numbers and then two off topics. So
Okay.
when you put up the number 14.9%, either fully, is that fully vaccinated?
Fully is how we report it. Mhm.
So does that include everyone in DC who's been possibly vaccinated out of state by private doctors, by people other than DC? Is that, or is it possible that?
In theory, it should, Mark, if the system is designed that way, but we know, yeah. Okay, but we know that there are some instances where we're not getting that data from certain states. It's not being presented, sent to us either directly or through interoperable systems that were created for this process. We also know that some of the federal entities that are vaccinating in the district are not reporting to us, and it would be very peculiar if they are federal entities vaccinating in DC, receiving a direct allocation from the federal government, but they have not vaccinated any DC residents. The VA comes to mind.
And on the, back to Julie's questions about people on the wait list who haven't gotten a notice or are not responding to them, I thought when you first rolled it out, you said if somebody was on the list and got offered 3 times and didn't respond 3 times, and they're dropped off the list.
Correct. So
Okay, has anybody been dropped? Do you know how many people have been dropped off?
none. No
None
people
yet.
have been dropped off the list through that process because no one has received 3 invitations for an appointment.
Okay, thank you. And then on off-topic questions, Mayor, if I could just follow up on the questions about, there was a traffic fatality, there was a pedestrian fatality recently, and I guess people just want to know, you were ending the program where you lowered some of the speed limits to 15 miles per hour to local traffic only closings. What can you tell safety advocates, people who want to see something done in light of these recent accidents and the growing numbers of fatalities?
Well, certainly, Mark. I don't know what that has to do with are you talking about slow streets? Oh, you linked them, and I don't see the link. Okay. Well, I don't know that too many people were satisfied with that program, but hopefully we can look at it more closely so it can come back in a more effective way. That's what I would say about slow streets. There was a baby who was killed in a crash on a 4-year-old near Kennedy Street, and recently, this past weekend, what I'm addressing today was a cyclist who was killed. There were 5 other cars involved as well. And I think, and I don't want to get ahead of official investigations, And we will always look, anytime we have traffic incidents. I get a report about traffic fatalities just like I do about other losses of life, including homicide in our city. We always want to look to see if there's something that could have been done, certainly from the city's perspective, to change that outcome. And that's what we will do in these cases as well. And so the types of things that you look at is the road itself, the engineering of the road, the traffic signals, the enforcement of whether it's speed cameras or red light cameras. Any of those things contribute to the crash. Some cases we find that they do, other cases we don't. And so any loss of life certainly is tragic, and we want to know if we can improve outcomes for people who are riding bicycles, walking across the street with their mom, or driving, being a passenger, riding the bus. And so we want everybody to be safe on the roads.
And then my last topic, just about hearing complaints from members of the council about cancellation of the EOM council phone briefing that has been going on during COVID. You know, I'm just wondering what you say to the council members about that, and if Councilmember Bonds might want to react to that.
No, certainly. As you can see, we talk all the time. We'll continue to talk on all of the issues that are important. But I also think it's important. We have been hosting a call for a year, and that we are going to get back into some regular order. And that includes, even for you guys, that we've been coming to this room and talking for an hour, and some regular order from us is to go out in the community and talk. You've covered me for 6 years in council breakfasts, and I think those are in order too. So I do think that there is we have been operating in an emergency communications mode, and we are trying to get into some regular order.
Will you continue the weekly media briefings?
Maybe not in this place all the time.
Councilmember Bond, your reaction, and what are you hearing from your colleagues on the council about this?
Well, of course, my colleagues and I enjoy very much having the option to speak directly to the executive side of our government, and we want to do it whenever we can. There have been some concerns about what has happened. We were dependent on this weekly conversation, but we also submit questions in writing, and so I think that avenue is still available to us, and we will use it. But most importantly, we really are looking forward to the breakfasts again. And I'm just hoping that the breakfasts can happen more frequently than just once a month or thereabouts. I think we're at a point where it would be very wise for us to have a check-in on a more regular basis.
Thank you.
Sam?
Yes, question for Councilmember Bonds as well. Your bill passed last week, basically making an exception for evictions for health and safety. I'm just curious about that. Why did you think it passed as it did? And then, should there be other exceptions for evictions?
Yes and no. The bottom line for the legislation was to make sure that individuals would be safe in their home and that they had a home that was safe. And so that was the nature of the legislation from last week. Want to make sure that people are not intimidated, are not suffering from assaults, which was the case in a few instances that were called to our attention. The eviction itself, I think as time continues, we are seeing that it is problematic. Problematic because you have seen today that we have a big bucket of money to assist with rent. But we're not seeing the tenants take advantage of it. And I am so afraid that we are going to lose the opportunity to have these funds if we don't come up with a solution, a way to get tenants to take advantage of this money. I think the money is very generous. If I were in a situation where I'm suffering from the effects of coronavirus, I would be concerned about having a moratorium for over a year, not having the ability to pay my rent. And then I would think about, my goodness, this is a fund that also will pay in advance a few months. So I'm really appealing to all of our tenants to take advantage of this money. It is not very savvy on our part to not do that. This is taxpayers' dollars, and we want to make sure that we use it wisely. So that's my plea to tenants across the city.
Is there something that keeps because obviously the landlords would be interested in having the tenants get the money. Is there something that's keeping the landlords from either pushing the tenants to get it or saying, help this person out?
Probably the moratorium. I mean, we've seen it not just with rent, but also with utility payments. Mm-hmm. And so there is a, it's a kind of a tension that it says, well, I have time because there's a moratorium, so I have time, I'll deal with it later. And what we don't want people to do is to wait, because there could be a crush. The government has to get a certain amount of the dollars out by September the 30th, or, the American Rescue Plan is going to pull it back. So that's what we don't want people to do, to wait. The same is true for utilities. There's a moratorium on the cutoff of utilities, and we have a lot of people who are in arrears, and we have existing programs. So we want them to do that. Now, what Laura and the team have worked on is a way to do it all on the same application. You don't have to go to this website or that website. You don't have to upload the information 2 or 3 different ways. And the system is designed, and Laura, you correct me if I'm wrong, to tell you what you're eligible for.
We've already had this morning, since we did our announcement, more than 50 people going in and beginning to apply, and that's what we want to see, that the relief is there. And we're standing by, and we're beginning to take applications. Landlords can apply on behalf of their tenants, and it will ping the tenant to then go ahead and upload their information. And when tenants apply, it will go ahead and reach out to the landlord so that they can verify on their end as well. And we can provide a range of assistance, utility and rent relief through our portal.
The landlord can apply. I've been hearing from landlords complaining, that I guess they're not motivated. Can the landlord now apply on behalf of a tenant?
So yes, a landlord can go on to state.dc.gov, and the tenant still needs to consent to the application before the funds are released, but the landlord can go on and initiate. And we're also partnering with landlords, so we will support landlords to help their tenants apply as well, so that we can get that relief out into community.
Is that new?
So this program, the web portal that brings those business processes together is new. Landlord chat has been available to landlords for some time now, and Director Donaldson can speak to the chat program.
Yes, landlords can apply to the chat program. They do also need to gather and tenants need to confirm the information about need related to COVID, as well as financial need. And then, in addition, they have to acknowledge the rent owed. In other words, that there is back rent owed as well for the CHAP program.
Yes, James?
I have a question for you, Mayor, and a question for Dr. Nesbitt.
Okay.
Start with Dr. Nesbitt. Dr. Nesbitt, in Maryland, Prince George's has the lowest number of people that have been vaccinated. However, many Prince Georgians work in the district, and some of them have taken advantage of district programs in terms of inoculation. Have you communicated with Dr. Ernest Carter at the Prince George's Department of Health in terms of that fact and maybe statistics in regards to that? And Mayor Bowser, on off topic, earlier this year, the House of Representatives voted to grant you floor privileges. Will you be taking advantage of floor privileges during the week of April the 19th in terms of the DC Statehood bill? And I don't know whether you have that same privilege in the Senate. I don't know that. And are you aware, do you have that same privilege in the Senate?
I do believe I do. I have engaged in a lot of lobbying on statehood, and I will continue to do that. I don't know that I will be doing it on the floor, but I will be heavily involved. Prince George's County,
Yeah,
Dr.
so,
Nesbitt.
It's an excellent question because it gives us the opportunity to sort of emphasize in terms of where we are and why it's important that 100% of doses that come into the district, that we have the shared goal of getting those vaccines into district residents. I appreciate that you cited that Prince George's County has the lowest percentage of individuals fully vaccinated in the state of Maryland, but last week we were lower than Prince George's County here in the district. So it's very important for us to be able to focus again on our equitable approach and get 100% of the vaccines that come into the district into DC residents. So having those shared values between the DC government, the community health centers, the independent pharmacies, the large pharmacies that are getting doses through the federal retail pharmacy program, it's important for them to help prioritize vaccinating DC residents given that they're given doses in DC and they count in our allocation. The other piece that I'll answer to that is that yes, I speak to Dr. Carter. We talk about a lot of things. I'm also in touch with Dr. Travis Gales in Montgomery County and all of the health officers in the National Capital Region through our Health Officials Committee meeting group in the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, or COG. But yes, we have a lot of conversations and communication with Prince George's County as well as Montgomery County, Maryland, about vaccines and other topics.
All right, last one, Stephanie and then Julie.
Mayor Bowser, I have an off-topic question.
Okay.
This is an important topic, though, for the city. We've been covering an increase in younger people involved in more violent crimes in the district, and we know about the increase in carjackings, but teenagers are leading the way. We had the Nats Park fatality, and then last week we learned of another fatality by CM 14th Street's Northeast, involving what the family of the victim says were two teens who stole a grandmother's vehicle. My question for you, we did talk with the Department of Youth and Rehabilitation Services that said on the back end, one of their things that they're doing is trying to bring their programs back from virtual to more in person, trying to reach those kids. In the district, what are you all doing on the front end to address this issue and these teens?
Well, we want all the kids involved in in-person activities as well. We will continue to work with their families to keep them engaged. We have a substantial number of young people who we're trying to make sure they can have a summer youth employment opportunity, council member. We have 10,000 that we know are funded, and we're going to work on another 3,000 who have also signed up. So the kids want to stay engaged, and we want them to be engaged in those programs as well. But when we know we have young people who are violent, who have access to guns, and who need extra help, we have to make sure that we are targeting them. Our Building Blocks initiative will also focus on those young people when we know that they are likely to be victimized or likely to be perpetrators of a crime. So we're looking at all of the areas around the city where we've seen the most gunfire, the most calls for service, and really trying to target young people in those areas.
Can I ask you any direct message you would say to some of these kids? Some of them, it's not about guns, it's about taking a vehicle and going for a joyride, for lack of a better word, but officials seem to be saying that there's a sense of boredom and these kids looking for something to do. What would you say if you were talking to?
Well, I don't know that I would take a simple assessment, to be honest with you, because frequently these cases are much more complicated than that. And stolen cars are usually not a simple joyride. They could be part of the commission of a much more serious crime. In fact, the carjackings that we see often involve a stolen vehicle. So you won't ever hear me say the words joyride, because they can frequently turn into something much worse, including an inexperienced driver killing somebody. So that's key. So what do I say to young people? I would say ask for help. Don't throw your life away. Don't ruin your family's life, and certainly don't hurt people in your community. Julie, you have the last one.
All right, I'll ask one for Dr. Nesbitt and one for Mayor Bowser.
Okay.
Dr. Nesbitt, to follow up on the discussion earlier with Amanda about pharmacies, I was just having a conversation this morning with a pharmacy owner in the district who had a couple questions I'd like to pass on. He asks, first of all, does the district have the authority to tell him you can't use your own scheduling system to schedule federal doses? And second, if he does agree to use the DC system, he's stopped scheduling right now through his own system. How is he going to get information? When is he going to hear about how to be part of the DC system?
Well, he can. Let me just jump in, Dr. Nesbitt, because it sounds like this is a specific questioner. I don't know if it's the same questioner that Amanda was referring to, but let's deal with his questions directly. Dr. Nesbitt has already explained, and as we've explained here 1,000 times, and people have asked us in 1,000 different ways, shouldn't your system be more equitable? Shouldn't your system not require people to figure out where to call or how fast to call or who calls the fastest? Shouldn't that be the system that you have in place? And that's what we built, and that's what we want to have in place, and we want our pharmacies to participate in that system as well.
But does the district have the authority to say if you're getting federal doses, you can't use your own system to schedule those doses?
So Julie, the best answer to that is we have been charged to be responsible for vaccine allocation in the District of Columbia and for getting our residents vaccinated. As you all know, on the dashboard, we have 80.7% of the doses that have been allocated to the district have been administered. It's over 92% for the state allocation. It's in the 30s for the federal entities, right? So I think we need to give some attention to whether or not whatever approaches are proposed by other entities are not determined to be as efficient as the processes we have in place, and what the actual goals of the federal programs are and how they align with our DC mission and values. Thanks.
Great point. And Mayor Bowser, my last question. The Department of Employment Services, as you know, has had a number of problems with people accessing their unemployment benefits. Do you know right now how many people are still affected by that and what the timeline is for solving those problems?
Which problem? Which for people who have some problem that they have to rectify?
In trying to access their unemployment benefits. They're not getting their benefits.
That is I can't answer that question because there are people, as you know, who get captured in the system for one reason or another that need to provide additional information. Something needs to be investigated. Are you talking about that group of people?
I guess so, yes.
Well, that wouldn't be, well, your question, don't you know? Who are you talking about?
Yes, do you know how many people right now are eligible for unemployment benefits that they've applied for that they're not able to get?
I don't know if they're eligible, okay? Or they could be eligible if they provide the information that's needed. So that's I don't know what that group is offhand, but Unique would know. Dr. Morris Hughes would know. I mean, the group of people I'm talking about have been kind of, I'm not using the right word. She has a word that she uses, but they've kind of been captured in the system for needing more information, for possibly not being eligible, for having some fraud. It could be any number of reasons. that you're, and I don't know what that number is. I'm not aware of any system issue that is preventing anybody, and I'm looking to John to see if there's, I don't think that there is, Julie, any system issue that is preventing anybody from accessing their unemployment. I do know that the director continues to update the systems and continues also to focus on where the UI new system is and how quickly we can get that in place.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you.
We now return to our previously scheduled program, already in progress.